The birth of a forgotten people. In the northern reaches of ancient Greece, where mountains rise like natural walls and cold northerly winds blow across vast plains, a people long considered backward by other Greeks emerged, the Macedonians. To the Athenians and Spartans, they were almost barbarians, rough shepherds, hunters, frontier warriors. They lacked the sophisticated philosophy of Athens, nor the military discipline of Sparta. But this superficial impression hid a strength that would change the world: the ability to learn from the Greeks, absorb their culture, and, at the same time, create their own identity marked by war, strategy, and ambition. The Kingdom of Macedonia, still in the 6th and 5th centuries BC, was ruled by the Argead dynasty, which claimed descent from Heracles, the mythical hero. It was a symbolic but important detail. It linked the Macedonians to the lineage of the gods and to the Greek cultural universe. Gradually, this seemingly peripheral people would become protagonists of the greatest political and military revolution of antiquity. Philip II, the architect of the empire. The history of the Macedonian Empire cannot be told without Philip II, the man who paved the way for everything that would come after. When he ascended the throne in 359 BC, the kingdom was threatened, surrounded by enemies, unstable, and militarily inferior. But Philip would transform this weakness into strength. His first genius was to reform the army. He created the famous Macedonian phalanx, an infantry formation equipped with giant spears called sarissas, which could reach up to 6 meters in length. This innovation gave Macedonian soldiers a far greater range than any enemy could imagine. The phalanx was like a moving iron wall, almost impossible to breach. But Philip didn't stop there. He mastered diplomacy and intrigue, marrying foreign princesses several times to forge alliances. He expanded his kingdom step by step, annexing territories, strengthening his influence, and finally, in 338 BC, he won the famous Battle of Chaeronea, where he defeated the coalition of Athens and Thebes. The battle resulted in a decisive victory for the Macedonians, marking the end of the independence of the Greek city-states and the beginning of Macedonian rule over Greece, with the consequent disintegration of Athenian democracy. All of Greece fell under Macedonian rule. Former rivals became subjects. For the first time, someone had succeeded in uniting the Greek city-states, and that someone was Philip II. But fate would be cruel. In 336 BC, at the height of his power, Philip was assassinated, still a mystery shrouded in palace conspiracies. His son, just 20 years old, would inherit the throne. And this young man would change world history forever. Alexander the Great, conqueror of the impossible. His name echoes to this day as a synonym for greatness. Alexander III of Macedon, better known as Alexander the Great. Educated since childhood by the philosopher Aristotle, he grew up immersed in the stories of Greek mythology and the science of the time. He admired heroes like Achilles and dreamed of surpassing them. For him, war was not just conquest, it was a way to enter eternity. As soon as he assumed the throne, Alexander demonstrated his courage. He suppressed internal revolts and marched against Thebes, destroying the city as an example to any other that dared challenge him. In a short time, he consolidated Greece under his rule. But his true ambition lay beyond the Aegean Sea, the Colossus of the East, the Persian Empire, against the greatest empire in the world. At that time, the Persian Empire was the greatest known power, stretching from Asia Minor to Egypt and India. It was a gigantic machine of wealth and armies. Many thought it impossible to defeat, but Alexander believed in the impossible. In 334 BC, he crossed the Hellespont with some 40,000 soldiers. In his first major battle at Granicus, he crushed the Persian satraps. The following year, he faced the Persian king himself, Darius III, at the Battle of Issus. The scene is legendary. The Persian army had hundreds of thousands of men against the much smaller Macedonian force, but the discipline of the phalanx and the boldness of the cavalry, commanded by Alexander, made the difference. Darius fled the battlefield, and Alexander won over his family. This victory was not merely military, it was symbolic. The young king of Macedonia had defeated the ruler of the world's greatest empire. The dream of being pharaoh after Issus, Alexander turned to Egypt, which was under Persian rule. The Egyptians, tired of their oppressors, welcomed him as a liberator. In 332 BC, Alexander was crowned pharaoh. It was in Egypt that he founded one of his greatest creations, the city of Alexandria, which would become one of the greatest cultural centers of the ancient world, with its famous library and magnificent harbor. But Alexander was undeterred. His goal was to defeat Darius once and for all and conquer all of Asia. Gaugamela, the decisive victory. In 331 BC, on the field of Gaugamela, the battle that would change history took place. Darius assembled a colossal army, perhaps 500,000 men. Alexander had just over 40,000. The difference was brutal, but Alexander was a military genius. With swift maneuvers, he breached the Persian lines and led the decisive charge of his cavalry. Once again, Darius fled. Shortly thereafter, he would be assassinated by his own generals. With that, Alexander became the master of Asia. He triumphantly entered Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis, the sacred city of the Persians, which he burned in a symbolic gesture of victory over the enemy empire. The march to the ends of the world. After conquering Persia, Alexander did not stop. His desire was to reach the end of the world, exploring territories no Greek had ever seen. He marched east, crossing deserts and mountains, confronting unknown peoples. In India, he faced King Porus in 326 BC at the Battle of the Hydaspes. It was one of the toughest battles of his life. Porus had war elephants, creatures that terrified the Macedonian soldiers. But Alexander won, and in a gesture of respect, he returned the throne to Porus, who became his ally. However, the soldiers were exhausted. Years of campaigning far from home had worn down the army. At the Hyphasis River, when Alexander wanted to advance further, his men refused. The conqueror wept but relented. He returned to Babylon. The end of a dream. In 323 BC, at just 32 years old, Alexander died suddenly in Babylon. To this day, the cause is unknown: fever, poisoning, or some tropical disease. His death was as mysterious as his life was magnificent. He left no heirs capable of ruling his immense empire. The result was chaos. The age of the Diadochi. After his death, his generals, called the Diadochi, divided the empire into independent kingdoms. Ptolemy took Egypt, founding the dynasty that would end with Cleopatra. Seleucus took Mesopotamia and Syria, founding the Seleucid Empire. Macedonia fell to the Antigonid dynasty. Alexander's empire fragmented, but his influence remained. Greek culture spread throughout the world, creating the Hellenistic era, a period in which ideas, arts, and sciences flourished on a global scale. The immortal legacy. Although the empire was short-lived, its impact was enormous. Alexander founded more than 20 cities bearing his name. He blended cultures, encouraged marriages between Greeks and Easterners, and brought the Greek language to India. Thanks to him, the ancient world became more connected. His vision of a union between East and West resonated for centuries. Even Rome, centuries later, would be inspired by Alexander. Alexander never lost a battle in his entire life. His horse, Bucephalus, was so loyal that a city was named after him after his death. He slept with the Iliad under his pillow, inspired by Achilles. Many believe his body did not decompose for days after his death, leading to legends that he was a demigod. His tomb has never been found, one of the greatest mysteries in archaeology. Conclusion: the man who wanted to be a god. The Macedonian Empire was born from the ambition of Philip II, shone with Alexander's genius, and crumbled in his absence. But although short-lived, it left an eternal mark. Alexander's story isn't just about wars and conquests. It's about the human will to go beyond, to challenge the impossible, and leave a legacy that spans the centuries. To this day, when we talk about great conquerors, his name always comes to mind. Alexander the Great, the young king of Macedonia, who dreamed of becoming a god, and almost achieved it. So what did you think of the epic journey of the Macedonian Empire? From Philip II to Alexander the Great, this story is proof that ambition can reshape the world. If you enjoyed this dive into antiquity, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next episodes of our historical series. And comment below, which of Alexander's achievements impressed you most? Until next time.